Hey everybody, welcome to Cycle News America. Good grief, you're beautiful sometimes. Just finished riding this bad boy. This is the brand new 2023 Ducati Multistrada V4 Rally. We rode from Durango in Colorado to Telluride, and then from Telluride to Silverton today. It's honestly been one of the most spectacular rides I've ever done. Like, no kidding. Like, in terms of scenery, it was really difficult to actually stay focused and enjoy the ride and look at what the bike's got to offer. So without further ado, let's get into the tech stuff and we'll come back in a tick.
The $29,995 MSRP Ducati Multistrada V4 Rally is the third iteration of the V4 Multistrada platform, but its differences should provide the best of both worlds to both big bore adventure riders and long distance tourers. You've got the same 1158cc Desmo Zedici Stradale V4 engine that produces a claimed 170 horsepower and 89 pounds-feet of torque, and the same base chassis as the V4S, but you get a massive 7.9 gallons of fuel capacity, which is up 2.1 gallons over the V4S. There's ergonomic changes in the 1.5-inch taller and 0.7-inch wider windscreen, and it has new side deflectors. The Rally's Ducati Skyhook suspension now has 1.1 inches more front suspension travel and 0.79 inches more in the rear, with a new fork position sensor to help keep things under control. There's also 9.25 inches of ground clearance, as well as a 30% more preload adjustment range on the shock. All up, the V4 Rally weighs a claimed 580 pounds with fuel, so it's on the bigger end of the market, but the places you can go with it really are quite astounding.
Now, before we go on, I've got to be perfectly honest and say that it just feels like a Multistrada. Sorry, which is not a bad thing. I've ridden Multistrada V4s now for last 2 or 3 years since they've been out. The first time I rode one was at the national launch, the US national launch at Borrego Springs in California. And I absolutely love the things. Like, I'm such a huge fan of that V4 engine. It's probably the most versatile engine that's on the market today in terms of like a big bore style thing. I mean, it takes its heritage from the original Ducati Panigale V4 from 2018, the Stradale, Desmo Zedici Stradale engine. Now that thing's been put into naked bikes, it's been put into Multistradas, it's been put into like sporty naked Multistradas in the Pikes Peak edition. It's such a fantastic motor. It's not changed terribly for this thing. This new model gets more suspension travel. You get different well, they're not here on this one. You got wider rubber foot peg inserts, so you take those things out when you're going off-road riding. Back here as well, this part from when you put your top box on, that's been moved back a little bit, which gives your passenger, if they're brave enough to get on this thing, and I don't know anyone that is, that gives them plenty of room, although this is an incredible touring bike, let alone big bore adventure bike. As I was saying, like it does feel like a Multistrada V4. It's not different. I'm not going to sit here and say to you that it's this amazing, different, machine. Got a bit more suspension travel. It's just a little bit more refined. You also have the auto leveling system that the Ducati Skyhook suspension comes out with. I mean, the Skyhook stuff now that's been going for best part of 10, 12 years. I remember it back on the old V-twin Multistradas from a long time ago. So I've had a lot of time to get the electronics right with this. It's an incredibly comfortable bike. Now, I've had pub arguments with people where I say that adventure bikes or big bore adventure bikes are the most probably important and versatile bikes on the street today. You can do any kind of riding that you want. Like, we were riding over some of the most spectacular scenery, then we go down rocky, crappy looking ascents and we hit it with decent speed, and you switch the electronics off and then you ride it like a bloody speedway bike. Plus, then you switch it all back on and away you go, she's a road bike again. Now, this is actually, funnily enough, this is actually one of the first times I really made a conscious effort to consciously go through all the modes at the given times that they were applicable, if that makes sense. So whenever we were going, I always like to play around in the sport mode. Sport mode for me is where it's at. You get the full fat of the motor. You get stiffer suspension. It's just a more enjoyable ride, and it leans more to my style of riding, where we go for a good strap on the street. However, as soon as I saw a dirt road, flicked it over to Enduro. Enduro also comes with its own power mode as well, and you can feel the bike level out and everything gets a little bit more softer, a little bit more plush, and away you go. It's not anything that's not available on some of the other manufacturers, for example, like KTM. KTM also do exceptionally well when it comes to their electronics suite. However, the Ducati is really intuitive. It's very, very easy to understand. And as soon as you've spent 5 minutes just figuring out how it works, you'll know where you have to go quickly to get what you want. If you want to go in and actually change the modes within the modes, you can put it in, your basic sort of street mode and have full suspension, like the hardest suspension with the most engine and the hardest throttle response, or you can go the completely opposite direction and you can have very, very a light and sort of soft throttle response that you would get with your enduro mode, for example. So they're infinitely adjustable. You can do whatever, you can sort of make the ride as you like, which has been a bit of a V4 Multistrada trait, to be honest. Like the Ducati has been exceptionally on the front foot these days as far as being able to make the ride yours. So they've done very well with this one as well. At the end of the day, you're not getting something with the Multistrada V4 Rally that you can't really get with the V4S, if that makes sense. You get a little bit more suspension travel, you get a little bit more room back here and there. You get a wider windscreen, for example. I think it's an inch taller and 0.8 of an inch wider. Little things like that, and that does make a big difference too, especially when you've got a peaked helmet. So I noticed when I lifted this thing up, this Arai helmet, you can actually move the peak up and down. I moved that down a little bit. It's one of the first times where I didn't get a lot of wind buffeting, which was really nice. I could listen to the podcasts as I was riding, which was great. But yeah, it's the base model Multistrada V4 is such a good bike. It was my bike of the year a couple of years ago. I just love the thing. This is just a little bit more ratcheted up, 7.9 gallons of fuel capacity as well. So this bike now really is going after the BMW R1250 GS Adventure. That's the bike it's after. If you guys want to go out there and do your own fuel mileage test, go for it. I mean, we were filling up and changing modes and doing different types of riding, so we didn't get a proper amount of mileage that you would get, but everybody rides differently, and the mileage too is very dependent on what kind of electronics you run. Like if you're running with zero traction control, like we were in the last probably half of the day on the dirt, it spins up more, so therefore you use more fuel. So if you run full electronics, you'll use less fuel, but you won't have quite the direct connection with the throttle. But yeah, overall it's a brilliant bike, can't lie, love the thing. I've always been into Ducati V4 Multistradas. It's a brilliant bike, can't lie.